Our next guest. She's a trailblazer in TikTok journalism and listed among the 25 most influential women in the UK by British Vogue in 2022. She's also co-host of the BBC World Service, Where to Be a Woman podcast, and she'll share fascinating insights into the dynamic intersection of language. Sophia Smith-Gaylor, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my work and my connection with languages and really the kind of journey it's all taken me on and what I think can really be valued when it comes to platforms like Instagram and TikTok and how they can motivate lots more young people into wanting to learn languages and see a future with them. So I have worked for the BBC and I've worked for Vice News. I began my career at the BBC following not only a master's in broadcast journalism, but an undergraduate degree in Spanish and Arabic that I did at Durham. I actually grew up in a multilingual family because I'm half English, half Italian. And seeing my mum and my nonna speak to each other in Italian, but also their dialect in Northern Italy, which was only ever referred to growing up as il dialetto. And it's as a grown up that I've done my own independent research on it, and I found it's Emilian. It is its own language, but because of Italian politics and whatnot, it's called a dialect. And I was spoken to in these languages, but never expected to respond. So I grew up a bit of a receptive bilingual. And I thought, isn't it cool that my mum can speak all these languages? I want to do that, but I want to communicate with like half the globe when I do that. That's part of the reason why I picked Spanish and Arabic, because I could just speak to so many people around the world with those two languages. And I had the best time learning them. It was during my year abroad that I fell in love with journalism. I got to co-host a radio show in Beirut. And I also got to do work experience in Madrid with an English language newspaper. In journalism, it was quickly and clearly obvious that I was able to find stories because I was multilingual that my monolingual English counterparts in the newsroom were missing out on. One of those times was at the BBC. If you remember the very tragic explosion in Beirut that happened a couple of years ago, it was because I was able to speak Arabic that I went through social media posts and was the first reporter to cover a very kind of inspiring, incredible story of an altar that had been an explosion hitting a church and the altar remaining perfectly preserved. I was a religion reporter at the time and the first to find that story. It happened again a couple of years later when I became a senior news reporter at Vice News. I was the first English language reporter to identify a story that was going viral in Spanish press and bring that to global audiences. So time and time again, my languages have been really useful for my journalism career. There have been countless other times where I've been able to really quickly build rapport with someone, in sort of breaking or unfolding news stories where the fact that I'm always really passionate about, you don't need to be fluent. It's about demonstrating a bit of respect and showing that, wow, you've made the effort to at least be conversational. And there are really like pressing moments where that can be the difference in winning someone's trust and like just demonstrating it. I think it's respect. Maybe there are other sort of words we can put on it. But that was all in my like journalism life. And I also straddle this other life, which is as a content creator. It was over 4 years ago now when TikTok first appeared on the scene. As a journalist, I had to use social media all the time anyway, but that tended to be Twitter at the time. And TikTok was blowing up, and I thought, let me try making journalistic content on here, which I did. It was a bit spiky at the very beginning, telling or trying to convince a newsroom that, hey, TikTok is a journalistic platform. It can be a news source. Newsrooms don't like being challenged on that front because they like to think that they are the one sort of source for high quality information and content. it sounds ridiculous saying this now because obviously it's 4 years later now, and we know so many people around the world get their news from these platforms. But at the time, it was really hard to convince the newsroom. And I was told, "Oh, Sophia, no, you're not allowed to put your journalism on there." And I was like, "Oh, that's so annoying. Okay, fine. Well, I'll put something else on there. I'll put my love of languages on there." So I just started making loads of personal content. And that went even more viral than my journalism content. So fast forward to now, I have over 500,000 TikTok followers. I have over 250,000 Instagram followers. A lot of that audience has been built from my journalism, but the vast majority of that audience has come to me for the content that I make around languages. Some of that content might be around my experience learning Spanish or Arabic, but that's the minority. The majority of my content is about sharing new research in language learning or linguistics, the psychology of language. I use my sort of journalistic experience writing science pieces for BBC Future to bring what I've built as the explainer format. I explain new developments, new research to audiences. I explain unfolding news stories in the language space. Yesterday, I made a video about how the Russian government is investigating Duolingo at the moment. And I know I get messages all the time from people who tell me that they're studying languages at university because they've been inspired by my work, which is the best reward to get from making that kind of content. And it's certainly not what I set out to do. I have one particular viral series, which is called Etymology. So it's etymology, but with an A in there. Etymology, and it's all about the history of food words, where we got different words for food in English and where they came from. That's been one of my most viral series to date. And my video about onions and the etymology of onions won me 100,000 new Instagram followers in the space of a week. So there is so much interest in these stories and these videos, and I really think that they can be mobilized to help create new language learners and people who can see the benefits of multilingualism if they haven't been made too obvious to them growing up, which my context growing up in the UK, sadly, all the positives about multilingualism I heard directly from my multilingual immigrant family. I didn't really hear them from the education system or the cultural conversation here. The last point that I'd love to make are just two things that I'm working on at the minute that might be of interest to viewers here. One of them is that, inspired by the work, the traction that my social media work was getting, I launched an Etsy store. I wanted to try and found sort of the world's first lifestyle brand for language learners and lovers. So less an educational space and more like a community of tools and journals for people who love languages to buy. And I am also an author. And the next project that I'm working on is about languages. I can't quite reveal what exactly, but I'm really passionate about languages in general, and I'm always very eager to connect with individuals working on interesting projects in this space. There is an emphasis certainly on endangered languages, like the one that my mum and my nonna speak to each other in. But I'm also interested in tools that are able to show off benefits of multilingualism and what they may have brought to a community. As a journalist and content creator, those themes really interest me. So yeah, just to say, I'm very eager to hear about those. And yeah, this month, the coolest thing has been that I have built what seems to be one of the first, if not the first, language learning calendar. It was a tool that I really wanted, and I Googled for it and it didn't exist. So I spent ages illustrating and designing one. And then I put it out in December, and it's been one of my best-selling products to date that I've made. And now if you type language learning calendar in on Google, it's the top result because it was like, it's the only one that's there. So that's been a real joy to work on as well. And my ambition is to be able to get these calendars in schools. I've made them for adults at the minute, but what would be a real joy is getting them in schools. So those are a couple of things that I'm working on, and I'm really happy to answer any questions that you might have about content creation in this space, or sort of the marriage between multilingualism and journalism, Etsy store running. I have this sort of weird mix of experiences, and I'm very happy to answer any questions about them. And I should say that this year I'm busy trying to revive my Arabic. It's not as good as it was when I graduated, so I'm trying to revive that. And I'm learning Italian, and I've seen like a huge improvement in my Italian this year, which has been
That's
really cool.
great. That's great, Sophia. That's really enlightening, and so exciting what you're doing. You're in such an exciting space, and congratulations on all those followers and the difference you're making to people. It's not just locally, it's around the globe. You know, when you are online, it's global. What I'm interested in is obviously the Emilian language, endangered, and we'll be talking about endangered languages later on today. And also reflecting on my own language learning journey. I'm multilingual like you. I grew up in a trilingual household and, you know, didn't speak all the languages. I think you called it a receptive. Yeah. So I had a look at your etymology
Yeah.
series, really, really cool. And it seemed to kind of align with the immersive experience approach that I had in terms of gaining fluency in French. Can you elaborate on the immersive approach and the storytelling contributes to language learning? Because I remember seeing one of your videos about the history of the word avocado. Yeah, really interesting.
I think I always refer back to the context I've grown up in because I'm aware it's unique around the world. You know, it's an anomaly to only speak one language, but that is the case for us Brits most of the time.
Yeah.
And it's weird because in the UK, we are fed and we indulge in a love of language in terms of a love and respect for English. You know, we're the home of Shakespeare. There's a lot of content that monolingual English speakers adore about language, but it's often only about English. And I'm confident that when we educate further about how our language was built, where we got different words, they're not all, you know, indigenous words, so to speak. I think that helps gradually sort of engender an appreciation and interest in multilingualism and respect for other languages and cultures. In terms of immersion, the tool that I've tried to develop for myself, and it's the one that I share with my audience, and they're welcome to just imitate or they're welcome to like buy the blueprint of in my Etsy store. But like the Get Fluent with Me method that I have been using to learn Italian, it draws from my experience doing my degree when I had like really high quality language education, trying to implement that in a way cheaper way, but using, you know, the world's really different from a decade ago when I was at uni. Like we didn't all have a Netflix subscription, stuff like that. How do you take advantage of your Netflix subscription to learn a language, for example, so you're not actually paying anything extra? But here are some useful tips to gradually introduce loads of Italian content into your weekly media diet and build a world around you where you're making language contact all the time, and if not all the time, a lot of the time. So educating people on how we can use digital tools, social media tools to try and build up language contact time, and then doing good language methods around that to like really ensure it gets in our heads.
Sophia, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And what I understood from that, it was creating an integrated approach to daily life around language to, get fluency. Thank you so much. That was really interesting to hear. Thank you so much for your time.